what you saw last night is two really talented rosters. George Pickens is really good. And I told y'all that George Pickens was going to be really good coming into the season. I said, I watched this dude. I watched him live at Georgia. I wasn't at Georgia. I was at Knoxville, Neyland Stadium. Go Vols. Let's beat Florida. But this kid is out of this world. His thing is, can he stay healthy? His health is the reason he was a second-round pick, not his talent. Dude's a first-round talent. He just couldn't stay healthy in college. And you saw that one-handed catch. It was ridiculous. It's crazy. You see the talent for Pittsburgh. Even without TJ Watt, that defense had its moments, right? Even offensively, you've got guys like Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. That Freiermuth kid, the tight end, I really like. Najee Harris. But as I always say, if you don't have that guy at quarterback, if you don't have the guy who, as I always say, can take you there with the talent that you already have, yeah, it doesn't mean anything. I'm not discounting Pittsburgh possibly making the playoffs or not. TJ Watt will come back in 5 weeks, hopefully. Hopefully he'll be 100% himself. If he is, he's one of the 3 best defensive players in football. Might be in the conversation to be the best. But Mitch Trubisky is their quarterback. And what Pittsburgh is doing is wasting really, really valuable time. And they've been doing it the last 3 years. Okay, Pittsburgh's a very well-run franchise. The Rooney family, great. Mike Tomlin, great coach, never had a losing season. They've been wasting valuable time for about 3 years now. Because Big Ben's last great season was 2018. Because I think that year, if I'm not mistaken, Big Ben might have led the league in passing that year. He had over 5,000 yards. He was great. He had AB, he had Juju Smith-Schuster and all these weapons. And they were, he was great. Then 2 games into 2019, he had the elbow injury. And so it was a carousel quarterbacks that year. You had Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges starting at quarterback. I mean, it was kind of a mess. It was a big mess for the Pittsburgh Steelers. After that 2019 season, that organization should have committed and said, we need to go find Big Ben's successor. But they didn't. And they started 2020 11-0. We're like, oh, listen, Big Ben's back, right? Maybe he'll be here another few years. We don't need a backup plan. Yeah, you do. Because at the end of that season, Ben started to show his age. They lost 4 of their last 5 games down the stretch. And they lost badly in the wild card game against these same Cleveland Browns, who many of those players were on that field in that playoff game at what was once called Heinz Field. Last year, you really saw Big Ben's age, and he finally retired. And your backup plan is Mitch Trubisky. My thing is this, and this is why I've said since day one, I liked Kenny Pickett, didn't love him, liked Kenny Pickett out of college. Nice player, never blew me away as the type of guy that I'm like, okay, I think he can be a franchise quarterback. I could be dead wrong. The kid's never started a game yet. I reserve the right to see him play for an extended period of time in real life NFL games. What I do know is that he looks great in the preseason. What do you have to lose? Pittsburgh, you're not a Super Bowl contender. Kenny Pickett is 23 years old. He was in college for 5-6 years. I think it might have been 6 because he redshirted his freshman year, if I'm not mistaken. And then because of COVID, all of the college athletes were given another year. So the kid is like Joe Burrow's age. And you're not putting him out there? Either they don't like what they're seeing in practice, which I have a hard time believing given what Pickett gave in the preseason, or they're once again reverting back to their sort of really conservative ways. In that we've got Big Ben, right? Big Ben's just good enough. Like we're going to stay with Big Ben, stick with Big Ben. Don't need to bring in a new a quarterback to develop behind him. And now you're paying the price for it. Is it just so Mitch Trubisky takes all the hits? How's that going to help you? I mean, how's it going to help Trubisky? How's it going to help your team? Who gives you the best chance to win? Pittsburgh should be 0-3 today, folks. They should not have won that game against Cincinnati. That is despite forcing 5 turnovers off of Joe Burrow. And the offense for Pittsburgh was still awful. Had that one great drive at the end, but that was it. Did nothing against New England offensively. Did very little last night. When the highlight of the night for Pittsburgh offensively was the George Pickens catch. That was it. That was all she wrote for the Steelers. Mitch Trubisky is in that low-end starter, high-end backup group with, ironically, a guy he played last night, Jacoby Brissett, with Andy Dalton, with Teddy Bridgewater, those guys. Low-end starter, high-end backup. If those guys are your back quarterback, that is good news for you because they can come in, win, 2-3 starts, depending on how long your starting quarterback is out. But you never believe that they could be their franchise quarterback. You're not like, oh, listen, man, they could replace the starter. No, they're the perfect backup to have. Mitch Trubisky was Josh Allen's backup last year. If God forbid Josh Allen had gone down, perfect backup plan. He's kind of a poor man's Josh Allen, right? He's big, he's athletic, he can move. They don't have to change the offense. That's what you want in a backup. And we know Trubisky isn't in the long-term plans for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so because of that, I say, what are you gaining by starting him? So what, the offensive line is going to get exponentially better? Because if I know anything about offensive lines, I know this. They get hurt as frequently, if not more frequently, than in any other position in football. Because it's the most physically tolling. So maybe they build a little bit of cohesiveness in that unit. I have a hard time believing that because simply put, there's not a ton of talent up front for Pittsburgh. Put the kid in. Eli Manning, I heard Peyton Manning talking on another podcast about this. He was talking about what Eli told him once. Eli Manning said that he learned way more. Eli Manning was a rookie in 2004. He was the backup behind future Hall of Famer Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner started the first 10 games. Eli started the last 6. Eli said, he told Peyton Manning, Peyton said this in a podcast, that he learned so much more from the 6 games that he played as opposed to the 10 games he sat on the bench. There's only so much you can learn from practice and from watching on the sideline. There's only so far you can go. At some point, you got to get out there on the field. Sometimes you do have to take the hits, as brutal as it could be. Now, you don't want to get guys hurt out there. Don't do what the Bengals are doing with Joe Burrow or what the Colts did with Andrew Luck. Build that offensive line in the offseason, but let's see what he's got. Get something out of this season. Even the bad teams, Atlanta sees the talent that they have. Seattle sees the talent they have. Move forward, see what we do next year in regards to the draft, in regards to free agency, and find our new franchise quarterback. Because we know we're going to be bad this year. We're going to have top 5 picks. They have a plan. What is Pittsburgh's plan? What is it? Is it just to make the playoffs as the 7th seed and get smoked by Kansas City or Buffalo? Is that the goal? Because that seems like kind of a waste of a season, just like last year and the year before that. To me, what is your plan? Where are you trying to get? And it's disappointing coming from an organization that we've always revered. The standard in Pittsburgh is championships. They're tied with New England for the most Super Bowls. They had really the first dynasty in the Super Bowl era in the 1970s with Terry Bradshaw, all those weapons, Lynn Swann and Franco Harris and the steel curtain on defense. Those Pittsburgh teams had tons of Hall of Famers. And the Hall of Fame head coach, Chuck Noll. What is the plan? Start Kenny Pickett next week, Mike Tomlin. Who do the Steelers have next week? They've got the Jets. It's a perfect game to start them. It's a perfect game to start them. You're at home. It's a 1 o'clock window. It's not going to be a big Monday night game or Sunday night game from the whole country. A lot of pressure. No, 1 o'clock at home. You get an extended time to prepare. Put him out there against the Jets. What do you gain from Mitch Trubisky? It's not like Kenny Pickett is Trey Lance and is 21 years old and started, 15, 20 games in college. No, he started like 60 games in college in that stadium. So he's comfortable playing there. The Steelers know him very well because they're in the same practice facility as the Pitt Panthers are. You know what you have. Either you don't trust him, and if not, you shouldn't have drafted him, or you're falling back too much on your sort of conservative beliefs about how to run a football team and how to get back in the championship discussion. It can't just be great defenses, which Pittsburgh has plenty of those. They got plenty of great defensive players. Minkah Fitzpatrick's one of the best secondary players in football. TJ Watt just won Defensive Player of the Year. Cam Hayward's been in the league a decade, and every time I look up, he's making a play. That can't be the only way to do it anymore. This isn't the 1970s. And even in the 70s, you did have Terry Bradshaw, and you did have a ton of weapons on the outside. That is the game today. And to Pittsburgh's credit, by the way, they've drafted receivers extremely well. Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. You know, they took Antonio Brown years ago. We know the trouble Antonio Brown is, but nobody denies that man can play football. They stole him in the 6th round. And what was it? Was it 2010? They took Juju Smith-Schuster in 2017. Look how he panned out. They know how to draft receivers and tight ends for that matter. Again, Freiermuth, I really like that kid. Najee Harris, 1st-round pick. He's really good. Build the offensive line and see what you have in Kenny Pickett. What is the difference in Pitts? If I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I would rather miss the playoffs, but be like, oh, okay, we've got our quarterback now. See what you have in Kenny Pickett, then make the playoffs with Mitch Trubisky and get smoked in the wild card, because then you're back to square one. You didn't go anywhere this year. So I don't get what Pittsburgh is doing for the life of me. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.